Tarik LaCour, Shane Black from .com. We are coming back at you today with kind of a overarching look at the Longhorns football roster for the 2023 season, giving a early positional breakdown. We're 6 weeks now about from the start of spring ball, a little bit less than that, probably closer to 4 or 5. First transfer portal window just closed, at least in terms of undergraduates being able to enter. So the first transfer portal cycle for the 2023 class is pretty much done. We'll get another one after spring ball concludes, where I think Texas might be able to fill in some positional holes. But that's something we can talk about here. We're going to give a look each, at least 2 deep for each position on each side of the ball, and kind of how we assess it. I don't really need to give letter grades on it, but at least say, like, are we okay with it? Do we think it's going to be a standout group, or there's still some questions to be answered? And then taking a look at how some of the new additions fit into the mix as well. But I think we can go ahead and jump in here and say, okay, how we feel about the offense. Me personally, the offense I feel really good about, especially after some of the portal additions and some of the players we're getting back. Your turn 10 starters on offense. It's honestly such a good situation that, all those 10 starters probably won't be starting week 1 next fall. So, and that's not a bad thing. I think most of that movement could come along the offensive line, but get a lot of bodies there. So that's good to see. I'll pass it over to y'all. Tarik, it's been a little while since we had you on a show. So what are you thinking for the offense?
You kind of took the words out of my mouth there. I think that the offense should be one of Sarkisian's best. It should be his best, certainly at Texas. And certainly when you lose a player of Bijan Robinson's caliber, you are going to take a little step back at the running back spot. But I think that Jonathan Brooks and Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue and Trey Weissner and others will fill that role nicely. I'm really excited about A.D. Mitchell, what he'll bring to the offense. If you were watching the Cincinnati-Kansas City game and you saw what T. Higgins did in the back of the end zone, where he just said, "Oh, by the way, I'm 6'4," and just put up his long arms and got the ball. I'm hoping to see A.D. Mitchell and Isaiah Nair do that. I'm very interested to see how this is going to work with Mitchell, Nair, Whittington, and Worthy. My ideal there, and we'll get more into this, would kind of have if Nair is healthy, have Nair, Mitchell, and Worthy as 3, and then using Whittington as a Swiss Army knife, putting him in the backfield, moving him around, things like that. So I'm really excited to see what happens there. And of course, you have Jatavian Sanders, who I think could have an All-American type year. Of course, Brock Bowers will have something to say about that. And then on the offensive line, I think they played well this year. And remember that a significant part of them were very young, so this will be a big development. Can they take that next step? I think Coach Flood has got a lot of tools there, so I'm excited about it. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah, I think the only attitude is to be really bullish on this offense going into 2023. And we talk about stacking blue chip talent, and that's what Alabama has done for the past decade, what Georgia has done over the past half decade. And Texas is starting to do that specifically on the offensive side of the ball. Even if some guys don't perform up to snuff, or if you deal with some injuries, if you look at every single position, you go 2 or 3 deep with 4 and 5 star guys. So I think that gives you a little more wiggle room. If, say, Naor isn't as healthy as we would like, or, maybe an A.D. Mitchell doesn't come in and perform, up to standard, you still have a guy like Jonte Cook. Casey Kane started to come into his own in the Washington game. So I think all around, just having that much talent, it's going to be hard for this offense to, not put up 35-plus points a game. And as it relates to Quinn Ewers, Sark often referred to him as a redshirt or a true freshman last season, because, he basically was. And we all know how much better quarterbacks get in Sark's system in year 2. We saw it with Hudson Card in the 3 or 4 games he played last season. So I think it's going to be, a major step forward for Ewers in 2023, and that'll help offset the loss of Bijan, who, ultimately was the best player, could have been the best offensive player in the country last season. So there are so many other guys on this roster that are going to be there to pick up the slack that I'm not too worried about that.
I mean, I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of like controversy heading into spring ball on the offense. Hopefully Texas is able to stay healthy. Some of the guys that are working their way back from injury, namely Isaiah Nayor, continue to be on a good timeline. And
I don't think we'll see Nair until fall.
No, I think I put up a timeline that was a kind of a conjunction of what Sark said over time, along with Inside Texas, and it looks like August or early September for him to, assuming he's able to make a full return, without any setbacks this offseason or in camp, that would be around the time frame. So fall camp would probably be best case scenario. Let's go ahead and dive in, though. So I'm going to just try to take my best stab at the two deep without, going too deep into any one position group. We'll start with the quarterbacks. I mean, I think the starter is, without a doubt, Quinn Ewers. Anyone who wants to say Arch Manning is going to compete for that job right away in spring ball, I don't think you watch Texas a bunch or follow Texas a bunch or really know the situation there. But I think the most intriguing part of the quarterback room is going to be the backup spot. Saw the backup spot play a critical role for Texas this past season. And that whoever that guy is, whether it's Malik Murphy or Arch Manning, needs to be ready from the get-go. We got another tough non-con this year. And I mean, I personally am in the camp right now that Malik Murphy is probably going to win the backup job coming out of spring ball. I just don't think that you're going to see a ton of movement there. Probably wouldn't be until some time in the middle of the fall that we saw actual movement. I'm going to say Malik Murphy's probably going to be the backup coming out of spring ball, just if you're looking at who the second team reps are probably going to go to. Could be Arch. Hell, I guess could be Charles Wright, but probably going to be Malik because he was the backup for the bowl game practices. But anyway, pass it over to y'all for.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Malik is the safe bet to win that job. I think ultimately, I'm hoping that it doesn't matter who the backup is. It'll obviously be a talk on message boards and in the Texas media, just because when you have a name like Arch Manning, there's going to be a lot of hoopla around that. But hopefully Quinn is able to start and play for 12 to 15 games, however many games Texas plays next year. And the backup never really sees the field, just in games that are blowouts. So I'm hoping it doesn't matter too much. But if I had to give a lean, I think Malik Murphy definitely has an inside track to that job. Though it was interesting. I think I saw it reported that, Arch had blown AJ Milwee away within like the first week of being on campus. So I wouldn't be surprised to get a couple more of those stories coming out over the next 6 months.
I think it's going to be very beneficial for Quinn Ewers that he's not really going to have a serious quarterback competition, and Sark will just be able to craft the offense around him for both the spring and the summer, and then the fall, obviously. So that's really exciting. And as far as the backup, I agree. I hope it doesn't matter. If I would say this, if Malik doesn't win the backup, that's going to be very concerning because I could see him transferring if he were beaten out in spring. I don't know that would happen, but I know we're all very excited about Arch Manning. But Malik is a very talented quarterback with lots of tools. He could be a very special player, and I think him having, when he challenges for the job next year, him having sat in Sark's offense for 2 years, I think is going to pay dividends. So that'll be fun to watch there. But very excited to see what Quinn and the rest of the offense do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see kind of some of the strides that Quinn's able to make in spring ball. See what, specifically Sark is working on there with him, or, just how he's also connecting with some of the new wide receivers or, some of the returning guys. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be interested to see how the deep ball is looking for him and the connection with Worthy. But I digress on the quarterback room. I think we all feel pretty good about the situation there. And it's pretty confident where that stands at the moment. Running back, there is less certainty. around. Tarik, I know you mentioned at the outset of this video that you're excited for Jonathan Brooks and Cedric Baxter, some of the other young guys maybe taking some steps forward in 2023. I fully agree. I'm excited to see what that duo of Brooks and Baxter can do. But I mean, if I had to look at it in terms of how I think reps are going to be divvied up in the fall, I think it's probably going to go Baxter, then Brooks, and then Robinson, depending on if you want to take total touches into account, because they're still going to use Keelan like a Swiss Army knife. Motion him out, get him out to the outside, get him out in space, and he'll still be a critical part of the special teams units. He's really good there. I think in terms of the pecking order beyond those three, Jaden Blue is probably your next man up, and Trey Wisner is kind of be your prove it guy. Maybe more of a long-term developmental piece too, because I've watched him a good bit, and I don't know physically if he's ready for a heavy workload yet in college. He didn't have the best senior season at DeSoto, and I think he's got a lot to prove his first 2 years at Texas. But yeah, that's kind of my standing on the way the running back room's looking. If I had to put it my way, I'd probably say Baxter will get the most reps next fall. I would consider him RB1 ultimately, and then a split between Keelan and Brooks at RB2. That's probably the safe way to put it, though.
Yeah, I think that Keelan's role shouldn't change from last year into this season, despite both running backs ahead of him, off to the NFL. I think Keelan should still be, like you said, kind of a jackknife 5-touch kind of game guy. And then between Baxter, Brooks, and I think you might be discounting Jaden Blue a little bit. I think we often forget he reclassified. He was one of the top running backs in the class of 2023, I believe, and then he reclassified to the class of 2022. So that kind of...
I think he sat out his senior season.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
he just sat.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a spring enrollee.
Okay. But yeah, I still like his skill set. He's got a good build, really shifty, and I think he could force his way into the conversation with a strong spring. The one thing that I would say, this bit Tom Herman in the ass, but don't sit Baxter just because he's a freshman. You play the best guy out there. So whether that is Baxter or Brooks or Blue,
That's not going to stop Stark.
Yeah. You're in the business. You don't have to protect anyone's feelings here. You got to give the ball to who you think the best player is. And if you think Baxter deserves 90% of the carries and he proves that in the spring, go ahead and do it. I don't think there's any reason to, have a running back by committee just because you're trying to please more than one guy is basically my takeaway. But I think the good thing for every running back in this room is they're going to get to compete and prove their worth in spring ball and during fall camp. There really doesn't seem to be any preconceived notion from the coaching staff on who they're going to pick as RB1 and RB2.
Yeah, I think that it's imperative to really start seeing who your guy is at running back, though, because it's going to really dictate how you're going to run, with your play actions and whether you're thinking of yourself more as a power run team, a zone run team, whatever. So I'm excited to see that. I definitely think Keelan Robinson should be kind of more of a Swiss Army knife rather than an every down back. I think Cedric Baxter, who's, I think every service rated him as the best running back in the country after 247, and the other guys gave all their rankings. So I think he should get a heavy workload because we still need to run the ball. We're going to need to run the ball a lot to win the Big 12 and be nationally competitive. But I'm also excited to see what Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner can bring to the table as well. So that's my take on that. Brooks, I know he had the injury and he was having surgery, so I don't know if he's full go during the spring. But if he is, hopefully then we'll see how to make that duo of him and Baxter work.
Yeah, my understanding on Brooks is that the hernia surgery, that was successful, and that his goal or the timeline for him is still for return by spring ball for contact drills.
It was just very odd to me that during the Washington game that Brooks was clearly your best option to do a lot of things, and Brooks wasn't getting the lion's share there.
Yeah.
That's what makes me interested during the fall.
That was my issue with the whole thing. You know, he ends up going for, more than 50 total yards, 2 touchdowns in like the last 35 minutes or so of the game. And he ends up with like somewhere in the ballpark of like 8-10 touches. As kind of your RB1. At a certain point, they turned away from Keelan. But let's take a look at wide receiver. I think that's the most fun position group to talk about on the offensive side of the ball. My take on it is that A.D. Mitchell's your starting boundary receiver, Worthy's starting at the X, and Whittington starting out of the slot. I think that once Nayor returns, you're going to have maybe more of a position battle at the boundary, but you will then have an established top 4 in the receiver room. Adding Mitchell gives a little bit more leeway to let Nayor work his way back to as close to full health as he can get. My backups in the wide receiver room, I've got some interesting ideas on where that could go. I think the boundary for spring ball, your second teamer, is going to be Casey Kane. And he proved himself enough in the bowl game that he'll continue to hold down that spot on the 2 deep, at least until Nayor returns. I think out of the slot is where the conversation kind of opens up. Like you could be looking at Savion Red, Brennan Thompson. I might be forgetting a name or two here, but those would probably be the 2 that I would watch unless they're going to work Jonte Cook or DeAndre Moore out of the slot right away. But more than likely, I think at the X, Jonte Cook is probably the backup there from day one. I'll pass it over to y'all though, because there's a lot of conjecture on the X in the slot. Yeah, slot. If I didn't say already, Jordan Whittington. I believe I did though.
I don't think this is really going to get nailed down too much until the fall. I do expect the starting 3 to be what you just said in the spring of Mitchell, Whittington, and then Worthy. But I think if you but I think once you get Nayor back, you really Sark, as Shane was talking about, you have to play the best guy. Sark needs to play his best 3 receivers. Who does Quinn have the best chemistry with? And we know that Nayor and Quinn have the best chemistry in the fall. So I'm very interested to see how that kind of goes there. I expect Jonte and DeAndre Moore to be in the mix to be backups, as I do Brennan Thompson and Savion Red. Kane, I'm not as sure about. I do think, and I agree with Shane and you, that he did play well during the Washington game, but because he doesn't fit as much what Sark likes to do. Sark likes the faster, take the top off the defense kind of guy, or a really strong guy who can like go across the middle like a Jordan Whittington or something like that. That's where I'm wondering, could one of the freshmen potentially jump Casey Kane? And Jonte Cook is a really, really good receiver, so watch out for him. And I think Brennan Thompson is going to be very hungry to flash that Olympic-style speed that he has. So it is going to be one of the more interesting things, but I don't think we're going to get any closure on where that goes until the fall. And as far as tight end, we already know that Jatavian Sanders and Gunnar Helm are the guys there, so we don't even need to talk about that.
Yeah. As for wide receiver, I'm definitely cautiously optimistic. I feel like every year we look at the depth chart for receiver and the talent's always there. It's just, once the season starts, a couple guys go down, a couple guys start dropping passes.
No, there's always the guy who goes down in spring camp.
Yeah.
Fall camp.
Yep.
And 2 years ago it was Troy Murray, then last year it was Nayor. So they were wondering, is it going to happen again?
Yeah. And that's always unfortunate because, like, looking at it right now, it seems as if the depth is really solid. But, a couple guys go down, and then we're asking the question again, which one of these younger guys is going to step up? I'm a big Savion Red fan. I think he's a little bit shorter version of Jordan Whittington. That can be like a third down guy who plays, in the middle of the field, is not afraid of contact, can make you miss in tight spaces. So I'm hoping he gets a little more run this season. But like you said, I think there are, Andrew, you mentioned it, going to be battles at the backup X and the backup slot between younger guys like Jonte Cook and, Brennan Thompson, Savion Red, maybe even DeAndre Moore. So it's going to be interesting. It definitely feels good to have this much talent in the room because I don't know. I feel cautiously, like I said, cautiously, but optimistic that this is one of the better receiving corps, not only in the Big 12, but hopefully in the nation.
I would be completely overlooking this to not mention that, we're bringing in a new wide receivers coach, Chris Jackson. I think anytime you have a change of wide receivers coach, especially with a guy leaving that was as important to the staff as Brendan Marion, he had some good relationships, kind of at least known as a player's coach. That was at least the vibe I got. He always connected with the players pretty well. And I think you could be facing some attrition still at this position group with you bringing aboard a new wide receivers coach, a guy that's pretty different in personality and resume. And so I know guys that I was thinking might enter the portal last fall, like two names that come to mind are Jaden Alexis and Casey Kane. I know Kane was on portal a lot. He was thinking about entering the portal anyway. That could be interesting to see what happens coming out of spring ball. And, how many wide receivers do we add after spring? Last year, was it 2? Yeah, I think it was Tariq Milton and Jai Hall. And so, that Sark loves to beef up on those on receivers, even if it's just depth guys or long-term developmental guys. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch come April and May. I feel good about it. There's going to be position battles to get extra reps, and when it's all said and done, hopefully Quinn Ewers is finding good connections with these guys, and that they just all stay healthy. Tight end room, I think we can keep that brief. I don't feel great about the depth, at least compared to last year, because we had a lot more guys, and this year we got some injuries, and I guess some uncertainty in terms of receiving threats behind JT Sanders. I'll just say this: 2 guys that I would want to watch at the position that I would hope really step up are Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis. I'm kind of surprised Juan Davis is still around. Hey, wait, is Braden Liebrock, is he still on the roster?
No, he graduated.
Okay, so yeah, then I would leave it at Juan Davis and Gunnar Helm is the guys I would like to see step up, because your 2 tight end commits in the 2023 class, Spencer Shannon and Will Randall. I don't think either one's necessarily an immediate impact guy. Will Randall coming off, I believe it's ACL surgery, so that's definitely not going to be an immediate impact guy. So JT Sanders, Gunnar Helm going to be your top 2 again coming out of spring ball. Offensive line, then this is where we will wrap up for the offensive side of the ball. I'll go left to right of what I think the starters will end up being. Anyway, I think left tackle, left and right tackle. I think in spring ball are going to stay the same. Kelvin Banks has his spot locked down. There's no doubt about that. I think Christian Jones could ultimately get pushed if Cam Williams takes some steps in spring ball, because I know that Cam Williams seems to be the guy that Kyle Flood likes as kind of the next in line along with Kelvin Banks. I think the interior is where it starts getting interesting, because you can move almost all those guys around. I'm fine with leaving. Hayden Connor was left guard, correct?
Yeah.
Left guard. Okay, so Hayden Connor, I'm fine with. I know that he might be moved around this year, but let's just, for time's sake right now, leave him at left guard. Center, Jake Majors, probably. I think there are other options you have there. Connor Robertson, probably your second teamer in spring. Right guard, I think DJ Campbell is ultimately going to be the first teamer by the fall.
I agree with you. I think DJ Campbell is going to force his way into the interior line. But like you said, there can be so much movement, and every guy, who started last year and who played last year is pretty versatile. So that's why those 3 positions are kind of up in the air. I would be surprised if Jake Majors isn't the starting center, just because of the experience he has at the position. I know people have said he's a bit undersized and he can get bullied against bigger defensive tackles. I think for the final year in the Big 12, that might not make a huge difference. If the transition was happening to the SEC this year, that's another question. But I think just with the continuity that Majors has at the position, I think he'll be able to hold that down. But I completely agree. I think DJ Campbell should be one of your starting guards. Whether that's, taking over Hayden Connor's spot or Cole Hudson's spot. Personally, I think Hayden Connor was a little bit more consistent last season. Yeah. So I would insert DJ Campbell into the right guard position for Hudson. That said, it is a bit unfair for Hudson. He did a great job as a true freshman starting. Yeah. Obviously, some hiccups, but that's what you can expect from a 19-year-old. I just think DJ Campbell is too talented. He showed by the end of the season in the reps he was getting that he deserves to be on this starting line. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that breaks down, track who's starting in spring, and how that moves forward.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Campbell, he actually got more reps. I know Cole Hudson was injured to end the season, but he was already getting more reps to end the season than Hudson, just in terms of offensive snap counts. I tweeted something today that I think it was a little mistaken on PFF's part, but by PFF numbers, he was the only interior offensive lineman in the Big 12 since week 10, between week 10 and the end of the season, that played at least 30 offensive snaps in pass blocking situations and didn't allow a single pressure. They gave that sack that he let up on his first snap against Baylor. They gave that credit to Jake Majors, which kind of did him dirty. I think that was Campbell's fault, and I do that as well, but leave that where it is. Even including that, Campbell was very good down the stretch, and I think that he is ultimately going to be the guy. Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of dig into the two deep here, and we can leave it off on that for the offensive side of the ball. So, left tackle, Kelvin Banks. I think the backup left tackle will probably be Neto.
Yeah.
I think probably looking to get the second team reps. From what I understand, he was showing more flashes, performing at a more consistent level as practice went on last fall. Left guard, man, at the two guard spots that's backup, it could be anyone by the time the season begins. I would say heading into spring ball, probably the guy at left guard will be Malik Ogbo. He can be moved around as well, though. At center, I mentioned it earlier, Connor Robertson is your backup. You mentioned Jake Majors being the starting center, and that is an interesting point that you might just wait until the transition to the SEC to find someone else. I do wonder in Kyle Flood's mind if, Junior Angulau getting hurt last fall and then him ultimately transferring to Oregon kind of, put a pin in the idea of someone other than Majors starting at center. I was hoping Angulau was going to come back. I think among the portal losses we've seen so far, he was actually probably the biggest, because we all expected Hudson Card to enter the portal. So yeah, I think that was probably actually the biggest loss that I know of. Anyway, I think center is largely going to be a set position heading into spring. Right guard,
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, we were talking about Majors and Connor Robertson kind of being 1-2, and that Junior Angulau entering the portal might have put a pin in the idea of starting someone else at center other than Majors.
See, the problem with Majors is that Majors is a center for Tom Herman's offense. He's not a center for Sark's offense. He's not big enough, I think, and people who have really big nose guards kept exposing that. I was surprised that Alabama didn't just put one of their guys over Majors the entire game, but Washington certainly did that. They're like, okay, we know that's why they were getting all that penetration, was because Majors is a big liability due to the way that they block. So you need a bigger guy there. And also not just a bigger guy, you need a longer guy, because the way that they block at center, they're almost projecting that this center is going to have a tackle wingspan if you kind of look at Kyle Flood's other lines. So that's why I think you will probably see some guys being put there. If they were, because let's face it, if they were totally sold on Majors, they wouldn't have put Angulau there.
And I'll say this before I dive too deep into this. I want to mention Cole Hudson and Connor Robertson might end up missing spring ball because they both had surgeries in the last couple months. But Tarik, to your point, if Majors isn't the guy, are you moving Cole Hudson over to center? Are you trying out Connor Robertson? Or are you just like giving a bunch of guys run there and seeing what sticks?
Well, you probably want to certainly try Robertson there first because that's his natural spot. I think Cole Hudson could be a very good center, though. I also think, now this would all come down to his snapping, and I don't know how good of a snapper he is and things like that. I think DJ Campbell would actually be a really good center.
Okay.
The
Interesting.
problem is I know he's never played it, but his body structure would allow, I think and his aggressiveness too would let him do it, I think. Because he can certainly play offensive tackle, but he's not tall enough. And but he's taller than the average guard too. And he's got tackle length, as far as arms and stuff. So I think he could, I would love to see DJ Campbell get a shot there. But ultimately, you just have to open up to maybe 2 or 3 guys and see what the best is. And then that's something that would extend into the fall. What you want to do in spring is say, okay, you want to set up the position battles that will be decided in the first 2 weeks of fall camp. You're like, okay, this is who we're kind of going with at this position, and then we're going to decide in the first 2 weeks, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that you can't win with Majors. You can. I just think that Majors is the biggest liability on the offensive line.
I would say just in general on the offensive line, one thing to note, I mean, we saw Cole Hudson and Kelvin Banks start most of the year as true freshmen, and DJ Campbell force his way in there by the end of the year. This 2023 class, I don't think you're going to get even anyone on the 2 deep. So that's a kind of a testament to how Flood has built up this group over the past couple cycles. And also, guys like Connor Stroh, Trevor Gooseby, Peyton Kirkland, I think they're longer projects. So if you're kind of looking, it's going to be more known commodities on the current roster, not guys that are going to come in the class of 2023 like we saw a true freshman last.
What Shane said, that's why I'm so excited about the offensive line when we go to the SEC, because I think we're really going to be ready.
No, for sure. And I'm still excited about the long-term potential of a lot of these 2023 guys. I think this is what I was going to say is I think the only one of the 2023 guys that is ready to come in and compete right away is Jaden Chapman. I really like him. I thought he had a lot of the tools of a top 100 kid. I think only one of the recruiting services had him anywhere in that ballpark. I mean, most had him around top 200 or top 150, but man, I like him. I think it'd be interesting to see where he fits on the depth chart in spring ball, because he is someone, if he'd come in the 2022 class, that could have been in the mix to compete for a spot in the 2 deep right away. And he still could this year. So I think that's a name to watch.
The offense alone should get you into the Big 12 title game. Now, I'm not saying it will win it for you, but I think the defense is going to have a lot to say in that too. But this offense should make Texas nationally relevant. So.
I think you make the point that the offense needs to carry its own weight in 2023. More than that, it needs to. I mean, I don't know if the defense is going to be as good. The defense was really good, this past season. So, offense needs to carry its own weight. But I digress. I'm ready to head to the defensive side of the ball unless y'all have any other closing remarks for the offense.
No, I mean, I agree with Tarik. I think that year 2 with Quinn and Sark's system, I mean, Steve Sarkisian is supposed to be one of the top offensive minds in the sport with all this talent and what should be theoretically behind a solid offensive line. There really is no excuse for this not to be one of the best offenses in college football. So it really is put up or shut up time because, barring a couple major injuries, there really is no reason that Texas shouldn't be scoring close to 40 points a game.
Yeah, that's true. 2023 is the time that it has to count, or the Sark has to make it count.